I want you to imagine, just for a second, applying for something that is mathematically harder to get into than Harvard.
Oh, wow.
Right. You submit your application, and you are stepping into this massive machine that processes over 3 million applications every single year.
It's an astronomical number.
It really is. And out of that massive sea of humanity, only like 0.2 to 0.5% are actually accepted. It is just an incredibly tiny, incredibly exclusive funnel.
Yeah, and when you're looking at numbers that small, I mean, a company isn't just looking for good candidates anymore. The main challenge is scale.
Right.
It's basically like trying to find a specific individual grain of sand by passing an entire beach through, progressively smaller mathematical sieves.
And the machine doing that filtering is the legendary and honestly highly feared engineering hiring process at Google. And that is our mission for today's deep dive. We are looking at the source data, the internal studies, and the industry ripples to answer one really massive question. Is Google's hyper-data-driven hiring model the ultimate gold standard that every single company should be copying?
Or is it?
Or is it an impossible, rigid barrier that actually filters out brilliant talent?
Yeah, because it's a system that affects the entire tech ecosystem. I mean, whatever Google does, the rest of the industry invariably tries to replicate.
So whether you are a candidate who is actively prepping for a grueling tech interview, or maybe a manager trying to figure out how to build a higher performing team, or just someone fascinated by how these massive world-shaping companies operate under the hood, this deep dive is going to give you the actionable science behind building high-performing teams.
It's really about decoding the standard, but to understand the 2026 standard, we really have to look at the wreckage of the old standard first.
Oh, totally.
Because to appreciate the current machine, you have to understand what they explicitly stopped doing, and more importantly, the mechanics of why they stopped doing it.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I gotta say, this is my favorite part of the old tech lore.
The brain teasers.
Yes. If you go back 10 or 15 years, the Google interview was famous for these wild, almost mythical brain teasers. They would sit you down and ask, how many golf balls fit in an airplane? Or, why are manhole covers round?
Right, the classic riddle approach.
To me, these always felt less like a job interview and more like a parlor game.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a party trick. I mean, it might be entertaining to watch someone sweat through the mental gymnastics, but I just don't see how calculating the volume of a Boeing 747 predicts if a person can write scalable software on a Tuesday morning.
Well, you're exactly right. And the data eventually proved that intuition. So Google have an internal division known as People Analytics.
Okay.
And they took their core competency, which is rigorous mathematical data analysis, and they basically turned it inward on their own hiring practices.
That's interesting. So they audited themselves.
Exactly. They looked at the interview scores of candidates who were asked those brain teasers and then tracked those same employees' actual performance reviews years later.
And what did they find?
They ran the regression models. And the correlation between acing a brain teaser and being a good employee was absolute zero.
Zero.
Zero. The interviewer might feel clever for asking a riddle, but it only measures a candidate's ability to solve an artificial puzzle in a vacuum.
Right. It doesn't translate.
It tells you nothing about their future success in a real-world environment. And it wasn't just brain teasers that went on the chopping block either.
What else did they cut?
Well, the data also showed that college GPAs are equally terrible predictors of performance.
Wait, really?
Yeah, unless the candidate is a very, very recent graduate.
I mean, I have to push back a little there. If someone gets straight A's in a highly rigorous computer science program, why wouldn't that translate to being a great software engineer?
It comes down to the environment. What happens in an academic setting is essentially a closed loop. The professor gives you a syllabus, the problems have known solutions, and the grading is completely predictable.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Right. But a corporate engineering environment is fundamentally ambiguous. Systems break, parameters shift constantly, and there isn't always a right answer hiding in the back of a textbook.
So a 4.0 GPA just proves you were very good at navigating a highly structured academic loop.
Exactly. It doesn't prove you can navigate chaos.
Okay, so they stripped the parlor games and the GPA requirements away. But if they aren't relying on academic pedigrees or, psychological riddles, what is the actual mechanism today? Like if I apply to Google right now, what does the modern pipeline look like?
So the modern 2026 pipeline is designed to be purely objective. It starts with an initial screening that heavily weighs practical, real-world project experience.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you pass that, you hit the online assessment. This is typically one or two coding problems, usually what the industry calls LEET code style questions.
Yeah, I hear that term constantly. For anyone outside the engineering bubble, what does an online assessment actually look for? Are they hunting for coding geniuses right out of the gate?
No, not at all. LeetCode is essentially a massive online platform of standardized competitive programming puzzles. The online assessment is strictly a baseline filter.
Just a filter.
Right, it tests whether you understand basic logic and syntax. It is simply a hurdle to weed out people who honestly just cannot write functional code.
So what happens if you clear that baseline?
Then you move to the technical virtual rounds, and this is where they really dig into data structures and algorithms, or DSA. The interviewers will test concepts like, dynamic programming or reversing binary trees.
Okay, let's break that down. I hear acronyms like DSA and terms like dynamic programming, but what are we actually asking a human being to do in these virtual rooms?
Sure. Think of dynamic programming as testing whether a candidate can break a massive, impossible problem down into tiny, solvable mini problems.
Well, I like that way of framing it.
Yeah. So instead of trying to calculate a massive data set all at once, can you write code that solves the smallest piece of the puzzle, stores that answer, and then reuses it to solve the next piece?
And what about reversing a binary tree?
Reversing a binary tree is about reorganizing a complex hierarchy of data efficiently. They are testing how your brain organizes information when memory and processing power are limited.
Okay, so those are the technical checks,
Right. And if you pass those, you finally make it to the virtual on-site loop.
which sounds intense.
It is. That is 3 to 5 virtual rounds, about 45 minutes each, covering more intense coding, system design, and behavioral components.
3 to 5 rounds is still intense, but I mean, it is nothing like the endless gauntlets you used to hear about, where a single candidate would do like 12 interviews over 6 months just to get yes or no.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is a famous internal study Google conducted, which they call the Rule of Four.
The rule of 4.
Yes. They analyzed thousands of past interview scores and cross-referenced them with the candidate's eventual performance reviews, and they found that exactly 4 well-structured interviews predict a candidate's success with about an 86% confidence level.
Wait, really? Why does it cap out at 4? Like, what happens in that specific sequence?
It comes down to the statistical principle of diminishing returns.
Oh, sure.
The first interviewer catches the obvious red flags. The second validates the core technical skills. The third tests the edge cases and system design. So by the fourth interviewer, the candidate's true capabilities are pretty fully mapped out.
And if you add a 5th?
If you add a 5th interview or a 6th or a 10th, your predictive accuracy barely moves. That 5th interviewer is just asking variations of the same questions and getting the exact same data.
So you don't get more certainty.
No, you just add immense cost to the company, you waste engineers' time, and you cause severe burnout for the candidate.
That is amazing. You are literally quantifying the exact moment where human evaluation stops yielding useful data and just becomes expensive noise.
Precisely. And managing human evaluation is the other vital component of this modern process. Because even after those 4 interviews, the managers who actually conducted the interviews don't make the final call alone.
Really? Then who does?
Google relies on a hiring committee.
I want to understand the mechanics of this, because it is completely contrary to how almost every other business operates.
Yeah.
Usually a manager conducts an interview, they get a good feeling about the person, and they say, I want to hire them.
Right. But human beings are inherently biased. A manager might be swayed because the candidate went to their alma mater, or, maybe they both like the same obscure sci-fi novels.
Oh, definitely. The beer test.
Exactly. So to eliminate that individual manager bias, the final decision is stripped from them entirely. The interviewers are essentially just organic data gatherers.
Just data gatherers.
They conduct the interview, fill out an incredibly rigid, standardized rubric evaluating specific skills, and submit those notes. The hiring committee, which is a group of experienced engineers and leaders who have never even met the candidate, reviews the raw data.
So they don't even know who the person is.
No, they don't look at the candidate's name or background. They just look at the code and the rubric scores to make the final hire or no hire decision.
Okay, so technical skills, understanding dynamic programming, and writing clean code all that proves a candidate can handle the massive technical scale of the job. But how does this blind data committee measure the human element?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right, because hiring a brilliant coder who is incapable of collaborating is like drafting a star basketball player who absolutely refuses to pass the ball.
That's a great analogy.
They might score some points on their own, but they will destroy the team's morale and eventually lose you the championship.
Google is acutely aware of that danger, actually. And they have a specific behavioral framework to measure it, which they call googliness.
Wait, googliness?
I know.
That sounds like a terrible corporate HR buzzword designed to justify hiring people who all act the exact same way. How is that scientifically objective?
It does sound fluffy, but the underlying science is highly structured. Googliness isn't about whether you're fun to grab a beer with after work. It is a rigorously evaluated set of traits.
Like what?
Primarily intellectual humility, collaboration, taking ownership, and having a relentless focus on the user. And intellectual humility is particularly huge in their rubrics.
How do you even measure humility on a standardized rubric?
By observing friction.
Friction.
Yeah. If a candidate writes a piece of code on the virtual whiteboard and the interviewer points out a fatal flaw in their logic, the interviewer notes their immediate reaction.
Oh, I see.
Do they get defensive? Do they argue that their way is actually better? Or do they immediately say, oh, I see the edge case I missed, let's figure out how to optimize this?
That makes total sense.
In a company innovating at that scale, employees will be wrong constantly. And the academic research on this, including some really good analysis published in the IRE journals, shows that this specific type of cultural fit evaluation is incredibly effective.
So it actually works.
It does. By rigorously testing for how people handle being wrong, Google successfully avoids making toxic hires and keeps brilliant jerks out of the ecosystem. It is a major reason they have historically maintained a surprisingly low turnover rate of around 5% during peak periods.
Okay, but, and I have to ask a critical question here, what does this all mean for diversity?
It's a very fair question.
Because the sources highlight a major industry challenge here. This system sounds incredibly meritocratic on paper. You know, you strip away the GPA, strip away the names, just look at the code. But doesn't a system that requires intense, months-long, LEET code grinding heavily favor candidates who just have this socioeconomic luxury of free time to practice?
It absolutely does.
If I'm working 2 minimum wage jobs, or I'm a single parent, I don't have 4 hours a night to study complex algorithms just to pass an initial online assessment.
That is a highly valid critique of the process, and the data in the sources acknowledges this friction openly. The preparation barrier is immense. It creates a structural advantage for individuals with the resources to treat interview prep almost like an unpaid second full-time job.
Right. It's testing a candidate's ability to prepare for the test, which
Wow.
doesn't always overlap with their ability to do the daily work.
It's essentially the modern equivalent of needing an expensive tutor to pass a standardized test.
Exactly. So has Google done anything to address that?
They have. They've actively attempted to counter this by widening the top of the funnel. They have significantly increased hiring for candidates without traditional four-year university degrees.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, they are relying a lot more on boot camp certificates or raw portfolio work to get people into the pipeline. But the rigorous algorithmic prep barrier in the middle of the funnel remains.
It's still there.
It is. The system is constantly wrestling with the tension between maintaining extreme technical standards and fostering genuine systemic inclusion.
So the sources show us this perfectly structured, rigidly quantified system designed to evaluate how a human brain writes code. But what happens to that perfect system when a human doesn't actually need to write the code anymore?
2026.
Right, because in 2026, AI is everywhere. Here's where it gets really interesting. How on earth do you test a coder's ability when an AI model can generate the solution to a complex algorithm in 3 seconds?
The landscape has fundamentally shifted, and Google isn't fighting the AI wave. They are integrating it into the evaluation. Right now, they are actively piloting AI-assisted interviews, specifically using their Gemini model for junior and mid-level roles in the U.S.
Wait, really? You're allowed to use AI during the actual interview?
In specific controlled rounds, yes. Instead of asking a candidate to write pure code from scratch on a blank screen, candidates face code comprehension rounds.
What does that entail?
The AI generates a complex block of code, and the candidate has to read it, debug it, optimize it, and explain to the interviewer what the AI got wrong or right. It essentially tests their fluency with modern AI tools.
That makes a lot of sense. It shifts the skill. You don't need to be a human dictionary memorizing syntax anymore. You need to be an editor and a higher-level architect evaluating the machine's work.
Exactly. But the integration of AI creates a profound vulnerability in the traditional virtual interview setup.
Because it's so easy to cheat.
AI makes cheating trivially easy.
Right, if I'm doing a virtual interview from my living room, what is stopping me from having an AI model open on a second monitor and just feeding it the interviewer's questions?
And that's the cat and mouse game. Interviewers are now trained to look for the physical mechanics of AI cheating.
Like what?
They watch the candidate's eye movements. Are they constantly darting off screen to read generated text? They also monitor typing cadence. A human types in bursts, pausing to think, correcting typos.
And an AI doesn't.
Right. If a candidate's screen suddenly populates with 50 lines of perfectly formatted code in a fraction of a second, the system flags it immediately. Because of this arms race, Google is actually exploring a return to in-person interview elements.
The irony there is amazing. The technology gets so incredibly advanced that we have to go back to sitting in a physical room with a marker and a whiteboard just to prove we are who we say we are.
It is ironic. They are embracing the future by testing AI fluency, while simultaneously having to protect the integrity of the test by looking backward to physical presence. No matter how good the tech gets, the challenge of authenticating genuine human capability remains.
Which brings us to the ripple effects. Because Google doesn't operate in a vacuum. You see startups with 10 employees trying to copy Google's interview process verbatim. What happens when the rest of the tech world tries to implement this massive machine?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, what you see is a lot of mimicry without the underlying science.
Copying without understanding.
Exactly. Many mid-tier companies and startups blindly copy the LeetCode-heavy approach. They throw impossibly hard algorithmic questions at candidates. But they fail because they don't invest in the deep analytics, the structured rubrics, or the intensive interviewer training.
So they basically copy the painful part, the really hard questions, without copying the data processing part that actually makes it useful.
And the result of that is industry-wide candidate burnout. You have brilliant engineers failing interviews at smaller companies because the interviewer asked a hyper-niche graph theory question, but that interviewer didn't actually know how to evaluate the candidate's thought process when they stumbled.
They just wanted the right answer.
Right, they just look for the correct answer, which completely misses the point of the Google rubric. It creates a tremendous amount of frustration across the entire industry.
Let's synthesize this into some actionable takeaways for you listening right now.
Yeah.
If you are a business leader or hiring manager, the message is clear. Do not blindly copy Google. You don't have 3 million applicants, and you don't have a people analytics department.
But you can adapt things.
Right. You can adapt the rule of 4. Stop doing 7 interviews. Acknowledge the point of diminishing returns. Use structured rubrics. Train your interviewers to evaluate thought processes instead of just correct answers, and respect the candidate's time.
And if you are a candidate, the advice from the data is equally clear. Yes, you have to practice your data structures and algorithms. That baseline barrier to entry isn't going away.
You still got to pass the filter.
You do. But more importantly, practice communicating your thought process out loud. Bring real-world projects to the table. Demonstrate your intellectual humility by showing how you learn quickly and adapt to feedback when an interviewer points out a mistake.
Above all, be authentic. Google, and honestly any other smart company, wants brilliant, collaborative human beings. They do not want LeetCode robots who can't hold a conversation about user needs.
The technical baseline is just the ticket into the stadium. Your humanity, your ability to collaborate and navigate ambiguity, that is how you actually win the job.
For a long time, we treated hiring like throwing a coin in a wishing well. We relied on gut feelings and parlor tricks. What Google has proven is that hiring isn't an art form. It is engineering applied to human talent. They've built a machine that measures human potential with mathematical precision, and it is constantly iterating on itself based on new data.
A machine that is now having to adapt to the reality of artificial intelligence.
And as that machine evolves, and as AI becomes more deeply embedded in every single step of the process, it leaves us with one final, very provocative thought to mull over. We know Google and other companies are increasingly using AI to evaluate candidates.
Yeah, that's the new reality.
And we know candidates are increasingly using AI to prepare, to write their resumes, and even to assist them during the test. So are we heading toward a near future where AI systems are essentially just interviewing other AI systems to determine human worth?
That is a terrifying thought.
And if so, how will you maintain your uniquely human googliness in a landscape dominated by algorithms? Something to think about the next time you update your resume. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.